Hi design thinkers, my name is Matthew Seer, and today we are going to be building a game inside of Figma using Figma's variable system. We will be building a event state manager and a character stat manager with a health bar as well as a simple interaction where you can click on the character and give it some health. Over time, it will lose health, and if the character ends up losing all of its health, the game is over and the character dies. But if you manage to keep the character alive by clicking on it and giving it some health, then you will eventually win the game when the game timer runs out. So, if that interests you, then sit back, relax, and let's jump into the video. Alright, here we are inside of Figma, ready to get started making our game. Now, what I have done so far is just create a couple of the core components that we will need for the game. So, got a frame where I will have my main game level, and if I go to my prototype mode, I have added a flow, calling it game. I also created a little tick container. All that this is a simple text block inside a frame that is centered. Beyond that, I also have created a small little health UI frame where we have our health label, maximum health, and the current health. And then also inside, we have our little health bar and the health loader. I also have created the base states for my character. It is not very complicated. This is a simple little character, but we simply have a block, and then we have our eyes, and we have our color, little different color states. Now, we could, if we wanted to, just change the color states using Figma's color changing in the new variable system, but just so that we don't make this video a million hours, we will just use it this way. But bear in mind, this way will be more helpful if you have more than just color changing. So also this is quite helpful to do it this particular way if you wanted to have different looking states beyond just color changes. So my suggestion is either feel free to pause the video and create your character states, your UI health bar, and a small little tick container, and a container for the game. If you've done that, then we are ready to get started. Let's create our actual data for the game, which will be stored inside our local variables. We will need to have a new collection. Now, we got a couple of things going on. Our character has health, so we will make sure that our character has its own health collection as well as states, so that we can manage the different states that the character is in. We also know that the game itself actually has its own different things going on, like the timer. And then of course that timer will then eventually determine if the game has ended or is still going, or that we have reached the end and we win the game. So we'll need to also manage that. Let's create our first collection, and I will call this game state controller. So this will be my game state controller. It will control all the things to do with the game. I will create a number, and this will be the timer of the game, which I will actually have tick down over time. I'm going to have this tick down over time every 1 second. I will give it basically to 2 minutes worth, because 60 seconds, 1 second basically ticking every time, so that will be this. So I will put that in place. Now we'll also actually have, so once it reaches 0, we could put a winning time, for example, as a 0 if we wanted to here. I'm not going to do that, but it might be something you want to do. For that, for the game state right now, I'm just going to leave that. We'll create another one. This will be our character. Now, character will actually control the health for itself. So we will go create a new collection. Character state controller. This will control the state for our character. Okay. We will need current health. We'll also need another number. Maximum health. We want to basically allow ourselves to click on the character and heal the character. So we have a healing amount. And we also will have basically a damaging amount that's going to happen over time. And what I might do actually, instead of adding this into my character, because the game will damage my character over time, I will actually put it in my game, in the game state. Damage amount. So over time, this damage amount will be inflicted onto my character. I give it 5 for that. I'll return back to my character state, a controller, and I will now set my current health to 50. I'll set the maximum health of the character to 100, and I will make the healing amount 5. So now I have basically this, and I also have my game state. I can actually start with these and get this teed up with the interactions. What I will do is, I've called these already some names. I've called them all my blob default, hit, death, and heal. These are really handy. And what I'll do is I'll show you a few little things with how we can use naming to change between different states. But first of all we need to do is turn these into some components. I'm going to use my batch component, and then I'm going to combine them together. And now they're all combined together, called blob, and basically we got my default, and these are my other states. So let's call this states. And what I will need to do is set up some of my interactions. First of all, I will have my heal that will take place over time. And oh, sorry, my cat decided to jump in and say hi. I will add in my prototype. So basically when I click my character, I'm going to heal my character. I'm going to have a transition. I'm happy to have a transition of 200 milliseconds. And when my character is healed, it will then transition back. And what will happen is it will transition back after a time. I'm pretty much going to make it almost instant. And I'll just round that off as another 200 milliseconds. So it's only delayed once, transitions back. So it's only been 200 milliseconds between transitioning in and out, which is nice. and my character then will be back to its normal state. Now, over time, the game will inflict damage on my character, and all that I will do is I could either tell my character to take damage itself, or I could tell the game to damage my character. So, how would I tell the game to damage my character? This is where this ticking timer is really helpful, because I can get a timer that can count down but then do things in the game. So this is how we can create basically other actual elements that we design in our design to interact with others. So let's create that timer then to get that going. I turn this into a component. I'm going to add another property. I'm going to drag this out and I'm going to call this update. I'm going to call this my event, and this will be my update event. I now can go to prototype mode and I can click on this, drag that out, and basically I'm going to put a delay. I'm going to say after every 1999 milliseconds with almost 1 second, I will go to my update. My update's going to actually have a few things. I'm going to actually do another after delay. I'm only going to make it 1. And now anything that I put into this actual part of the event will be basically all the things that I want the game to do with the information that it has every second. So every second I'm going to actually get the game, and I've got to keep this really simple to begin with, but we can add some more complexity here. So every second I'm going to get the game to actually increment the timer, or actually reduce the timer. So I will need an actual condition, and the reason why I need a condition is to make sure it's not 0. So I'm going to say time, if time is going to be greater than 0. So if it is greater than 0, that's great. That means that we can get and set that time. We're going to grab the time. I'm going to set the time to time minus 1. This means that we're reducing the timer by 1 every second. So let's go and test that out. First of all, we need to make sure that time variable is added to our little number. Let's click on a number. If it's in a component, we can click on this little I. It means that we can select both of the text blocks because we've called them both the same name. And I might even decide to actually call them a name. I just call this timer text. Timer text, there we go. I can click on the text and I can apply a variable. The variable I'll apply is time. And now I have the timer applied to the variable. I can grab the main one, which is the default, pick that out, and chuck that into the game. I'm going to anchor it into that top right corner, and I can go ahead and play the game. And now I can see that timer. It ticked once, and that's okay, because we have not technically transitioned back. But good thing, we already know that it takes away, which is the good thing. So before we get too carried away, we can finish off that last part by going back to the actual update, go to prototype. We can see that we have this little condition piece up the top. So we have just minus the time, and because we can minus the time, we will continue with this ticking away at the game. So that is great. What I will do is move to the next step. So we can tick the time away. What I will do is I'm just going to also basically deal some damage to my character in the game. So we will need to go, actually, we might need the health in there in a second. I'm going to grab my character and chuck it in there, like so. All right, so this is where we can actually use a very simple method to change our character's visual state through the game by when we click on a character outside of the game, you'll notice that over here there says states, and here is this little actual assign a variable. That will allow me to get the game to actually assign the type of state that the character is in. So what I can do is I can go back to my local variables and I could leave it in the game state, or I could do as a character control. And what I can create is a new actual variable. And this will be a string. This will be character state like so. Default. Now, we do have a default state, which is great. But what I can do is I can actually create another collection. And this collection's more just for me to show you how to create kind of consistent types of collections with naming conventions. This one will be our character state handler. And all that this is really going to do is it's going to just hold a list of names for the character's state. So we have that default state. We are going to have a real state. We are going to have a hit state, and there will be also a dead state. So, like so. Now you don't really need to do this for this particular game, more just here to also show you a little couple of extra cool things we can do with our variables. Because I've done these with the states, I can go back to my character and down where I set default, I can actually right click, go create an alignment, and I can actually click and use the character state handler. Now I'm using the actual label, which is really helpful so that I can change the different states of this character by just simply changing this singular character state handler here. So what does that exactly look like? I've got my timer. In my timer, what I can do is I can go back to my interactions. I can go to my interactions, and when I basically taken off some time, what I can do is I can simply go press my plus button and I can go set, and now I can set the character default state and I can set it to hit, which means that now every 1 second that passes, it will turn this to hit. Now I'm not turning it back just yet. So what I'll do is if I press play, it should tick. Oh, it's just a second. I have to click my character. Sorry. Click my character. Now I can assign it the character state. So now it's got a character state assigned to it. There we go. So there we go. When I click it, it will change to the hit state. And that means that our character will take a hit every single second. It's not exactly what I want to happen. I would like my character to actually take a hit every couple of seconds. We will be setting that up. So, how do we actually deal damage over time to a character if we're not wanting to deal damage every second? We'll need to have some way to count and then deal damage, or we could have some sort of interaction that takes place. But for this, I'm going to keep it simple and I'm going to set a counter, and then the counter, when it reaches a number, it will deal damage to the character. To do that, I'll need to go back to my local variables. I can open up them and I can go to my game state. So I have my damage amount. I'm going to also add another number, and this one will be deal damage count. And this will be the count that is going to eventually fire and deal damage. And we are going to have our damage counter. I might actually just shorten this, just deal damage. There we go. So we will deal damage when our count equals 5. So that means that I'll say the deal damage will be 5, the count will be 0 because it's going to increment over time, and then it will be reset. So in this little tick that we've created, I can click on this, I can go back to interactions, and see this little interaction here. What I will do is I'll add another condition. I will ask of it and I'll say, hey, basically, are you equal to this? So is the damage count and equal to the deal damage. So I'm saying, hey, are you equal to the value so that I can deal damage to the player or the character? If you are, we're going to set the actual health. So we're going to go to the character health. So current health, we're going to then set the current character health to the current character health minus the actual damage amount. And it will take a hit. And I will simply change the state of this character. So I will set this, and I am simply going to set the health, set the actual visual state of the character. So go to character and state. Now I have that state change, and I can say take a hit. So this is the visual setting the state. This will happen if the count is reached. I will also, at the end, make sure that the count is then set back to 0 so we can do it again in the next 5 seconds. So we'll go down and we will find a count, and then we'll say count equals 0. So if this is not true, if we don't equal 5, then what we will do is we will set the count, damage count, to the damage count plus 1. And this is happening every second. And if that's not the case, I will basically just make sure that the state of the character is back to the original state if it was not. So I will set the character state, and I'll set the character state to the state that I wish for it to be in, which will be the default state. Okay. Oh, yep. And finally, we have not added this in just of yet, but we don't have the ticking back and forth. We only have it tick once. So the ultimate piece at the end is that we will change to default at the end, and we'll do that instantly. So at the end, we will convert back to the default, which will eventually trigger the timer to hit the update again, and as we loop around. So every second, the character will, like this, will tick, and eventually it will hit a time, it will turn red, and then it will turn off. So as we can watch it again, turns red, ticks over, turns off, and there we go. So now our character can do that, which is pretty cool. So what I will do is I still got some of my Alright, so what I have over here, we have it where when you click on the character will just change over, and when I click, and then eventually it will change back. So this is where our character is transitioning back and forth. So as we were seeing a second ago, when I'm clicking on my character, it's just changing that visual, but not gaining any health. So let's make sure that we can give our character some health back when it changes. So we've shown how to transition both by the state changes, but we also have a click state. And all that I need to do is when I am transitioning back, I'm going to get this to add and then set another value. I'm going to basically get the current health, and I'm going to set, so current health equals our current health plus we are going to have the healing amount, and there we go. But what happens if I overheal? And let's say that it equals the maximum amount. That wouldn't work really well, so we will need to make sure we add a condition. Let's add our condition, and let's make sure that the health, so we're going to go actually the current health, and remember when we click on it, we don't want to exceed the maximum health. So if current health is less than the max health, then we're all good. What I'm going to do is I'll drag, I can actually grab this. Oh, okay, it's not clicking and dragging. I guess I'll just add it in here. So I'll go set, we will set current health, and we will set current health to current health plus the healing amount. Like that, okay. Don't know why it wasn't clicking and dragging. Oh. And we will need to make sure that we do the change at the end. So we'll go click this and we will do our change back to our default state. And I'll just make it instant straight away at the end. All right, there we go. So if I press play, there we go. I can't really see that I'm gaining health. I can only assume that is taking place. So now we can build our little health loading bar. And what we'll do is we are going to set some of the numbers and variables here. Let's go out of prototype mode. I'm going to turn this in and create it as a component. I will select the maximum health and I will go over to the side here and I'm going to assign it the max health number. I'm going to go to my current health and I will also assign it the current health number. I will click on my health bar and then up where the width of my health bar, because I have my health bar as 100 pixels, I will go and assign it a variable and that will be the number, which is the current health. So now that is set up, I can actually drag it out as a component and put it into the game world. So if I was to press play, so this will tick, and as I click on my character, you can see that it gains health. And eventually it's 100 and it gains no more health. Still flashes that little green, but it won't gain any more health beyond that value. So there we go. And we have a timer, and as we're watching our timer, the health should slowly drop down as it does. So as our timer ticks down, the health gradually drops. We're doing that. All that we need to do is have an event where it reaches the end and then the character will be basically set to dead. So if I go back to my tick event, in that tick event I have all of these going through. Basically there's my damage counter, so on. The last thing before we have this change at the bottom is just a last little condition. Drag that condition up, work that time. What I will do is I'm just going to check and make sure that my character has health. So it's current health. Is current health basically greater than 0? If it is greater than 0, happy days. If it isn't greater than 0, we are going to set, and I'm going to set the character state here. So we're going to go to the state, character state, and this one will be set to dead. So our character state, our character is gone, unfortunately. And that would be basically the game and where we lose the game. So what I'll do is, just to speed things along so we can test that out and make sure it works, is I'll click into the game, make sure I'm in design mode, go back to local variables. I'll go to the timer, and instead I'll just make sure that I'm dealing damage, but I'm just going to deal like more an extreme amount of damage. Alright. So if I press play, my character will lose a big chunk of its health. very shortly, or not. We'll double check this prototype mode. All right. Oh yeah, I probably still will want this to. Where's that down? We'll add this down. Change state. Change state to default state. And there we go. Keep that. What I'll do is I'll make sure, I'll just change around if current health is less than or equal to, which will be what I'll do. So less than or equal to 0, then we will actually do the character state change. That will probably be a better way to do it. And we've got character state to dead. Okay. We'll give that a shot again. Probably speed up the timer. Let's speed up the time. So the damage amount. I'll just say. No wonder. I changed that. That's meant to be 2. Let's set that to 35. 35. That would have made a big difference. There we go. And the next hit should take out the character. The character does take the hit. It does go to negatives, but we are not changing the state. So let's quickly go back to here and just do some debugging. All right. So if the current health is less than or equal to 0, then character state is set. We'll just go less than 0. Strangely enough, it's not changing character state. Oh, yep, just a second. We just double check. Oh, that's why, because I deleted the character. So we'll just go add in that extra, make sure that character is actually assigned a state. Problem with changing in and out objects and then having to reassign it. There we go. That should change it. So there we go. We took the hit. We saw the red, which is great. There we go. Changed, and it is no longer. Perfect. So our character perishes in the time. Basically, we can't do anything with this character when it's changed into this state because it only gains health when it's on this moment, because that's where we click on it. So that is the end. We can't click on it anymore when it's in this state. So let's adjust this back. Let's put it at, let's put it at 10. Let's adjust that up to 5 again. Let's close that down. And the last little thing that I'll make sure that I add into the prototype is just when the character does go, I want the health to basically be set. So set the health and the health, current health equal 0. Just because I don't want to see a negative value, and that will be the end of the game. So if we were to play it once more, just so we can gain health, timers will tick down and it will take damage, and that will happen every 5 seconds. So basically this will continue to tick. The good thing about doing it in this particular way is that the game will change the state, but you control the change of healing. So when I click on the character, this will tick, but when the game deals damage to the character, this will happen and override, and will continually do it every 5 seconds. If you were to put this on the character itself, anytime you click on it, you would be resetting it, but the game, you're not resetting. So that's the difference between the two. The character goes, the character basically set to that 0 state and is no longer. We can see it like this. I think I need to change that back to just being less or equal to, just so that it doesn't do that last little part. Less than or equal to 0. Just so now it just stays 0. It doesn't minus anymore. It stays as 0, which is great. And that's it. So what we can do for the last little fun piece is just create ourselves basically a little win condition that can pop up. Either you can win or you can lose. Let's create this. We'll add in a little text block and I will say game end. Doesn't really matter what we actually say because I'm going to replace this text. 24 and I will center it, set an auto layout, chuck some border, grab that color, set it to that, and I will pick this, give it an outline, make it a tad thicker, and we'll give it that. So basically this will pop up over the screen, and which is nice. And what I'll do is I'll just grab that, enter this, get rid of all that, chuck this in the middle, like, and this will be the game end screen. And all that I need to do is go back to my game state, and I basically can have a win or I can have a lose. This will be basically that. So it'll be like end game message. And to control the end game message, I could either have whatever message I want, and let's say default, let's say game over as the game over as you lose. And what I'll do is actually, when a condition is met with this little blob timer, so in condition, we have our game timer tick. Remember, we have this little state, so if this is happening, now what I can do is actually make sure, I can't really add another piece of logic, which is unfortunate here. But what I can do is ask this same question, plus I can also check the time. So I can say, hey, if game time is equal to 0, and then I will be what will I do actually? What I'll do here is this, I will set actually, yeah, so what it will do is we're going to actually open the overlay, which will be the end game screen. Center. And We'll minus that off. There we go. That's right. What I'll also do is just check the time. So that will overlay over the top. We will simply go to a condition on our tick and at the time that our character has ended up being set and we've basically set and changed the state to 0, we will need to set the value of the end game message. And that will be set to you lose. Just keeping it simple. So there we go. So there you go. The character loses, which is great. Awesome. So the message will change. And we will click on that message, go to design, go add that value, go add the game over screen. What I can do is I just set that game over screen to you win. Like that. And let's change that to 10 seconds. Actually, we'll do it 5 seconds, just so that we can prototype it. And when the time will count down, there we go. You win because the game, you still have health. Now, in the scenario you don't have health, what we can do is just go to character. We can go to the character's current health, set that to 0. We can start the game. Character's health is 0. The time is ticking down. And you lose. So that is how we can actually create the losing screen. When you want to pop that losing screen up, you might want to do it on the time that the character actually is gone. So you would do very much the same thing. Set the message down there. We'll add this event, and then we can simply open the overlay, and the overlay will be the end game screen that we'll transition in. So now when I press play, it does it instantly, because when it checks the game update, it realizes the character is gone, which shows this screen. And now we have basically a simple functional game where a character will basically be able to be healed at a time, and by you clicking on it, and then of course you dealing damage to the character, a time ticker will tick down, and if the character is still alive, you'll win the game, and if the character isn't, you will lose the game. So I hope that this video has been helpful and showing you a few interesting things with managing different states, to managing numbers over time, and having update loops and state managers, so on. For more videos similar to this, please let me know in the comment section below. And until next time, design thinkers, keep thinking, keep building, and keep creating amazing things. I'll see you all in the next video. Bye.